Ladies and gentlemen, Hebrews and Shebrews, welcome to the Life Podcast, where we inspire you to thrive as peculiar people in a modern world. And today we're talking to Brad Stufflebeam all about not just farming and running the biggest CSA in Texas, but now helping Torah home fellowships grow and grow in a safe, secure, and healthy way by his new project called Abrams 318. The point of Abrams 318 is to guide anyone that wants to or is currently running a small home fellowship. Guide them in how to vet people that want to come to the group, how to put together eldership for the group, and what to do with the children and how to make sure that they're learning and being taken care of properly. So we're going to get into all of that and Brad's testimony, and it's going to be a blast. Today's episode is sponsored by Goshen Tax and Consulting LLC.com. If you are like me, you have not done your taxes yet. Don't be in fear. Don't let the worry of the impending April 15th deadline grip you around the throat and make you cry. Just go to Goshen Tax and Consulting LLC.com, put in code THELIFE, and get 10% off your taxes. Give it to Kyle Smith, the Torah observant accountant, who will take care of all of your problems, all of your money problems at least. And as soon as you finish that, go to the other part of their site where they do marketing and website design, and let them help your business explode. So you can, one, get your finances in order by going to Kyle Smith at Goshen Tax and Consulting LLC.com. And two, you can take care of the marketing and website design like Shepherd's Crook Coffee did and improve your site, improve the response that people give you when they go there. And you can do all these things, kill both of these birds with one Torah observant stone. Go to Goshen Tax and Consulting LLC.com and put in code THELIFE10 to get 10% off their awesome services. So without further ado, I give you Brad. Brad, welcome to the Life Podcast. Thank you for joining me today, sir.
Thanks for having me, Luke. It's a real honor to be here with you.
I'm excited to hear your story, and I'm sure everyone else is. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got saved and how you came into the Torah?
Yeah, that could be a long story. Well, I was raised Catholic, and my dad was Baptist, and my mom was Catholic, so I was kind of raised Catholic. And then at 9 years old, my whole life changed. My mom had a car accident that left her handicapped. And that same year, prior to that accident, my parents got a divorce. So it was kind of a life-changing event in my life. And I think it's like that kind of contributed to who I am, what made me as a man. I kind of like my childhood kind of ended then at 9 years old, and I found myself living at home alone with my mom and sister 5 years younger than me. And but I know that event is what brought us to the Lord, and that's why I bring it up. I was in church regularly, practically every time the door opened. And then once my parents got a divorce, I'd be going to a Catholic church one weekend and a Baptist church the next weekend. And then because of my mom's handicap, which she's just a miracle that she's even with us here today. But she had a car accident that left her in coma. Then she was not supposed to survive, and then she wasn't ever supposed to walk again. And today she walks, and but the event left her blind, and they didn't realize that till after she had woke up as a coma. But I remember them kind of preparing me as a 9-year-old that she might not survive. So that had that little trauma in my life. But it's what the Lord has used to bring us to Him. With my mom's handicap, we were then kind of brought into charismatic churches and looking for healing and such. And I remember praying all the time, for Mom to gain her sight. And actually thinking back on it, until I was maybe 25, 22 years old, I realized He answered our prayer. He gave us all spiritual sight. And that event is what drew us closer to him. And it's what makes my mom's story so amazing as well. But while I was going to the Baptist churches with my dad, I guess that's when I began to hear the gospel, the good news that I didn't hear in the Catholic Church. And I totally embraced it and was baptized again when I was 12 years old. And then I'm going to these charismatic churches with my mom and being spirit-filled and all that part of the experience. And I remember going to a church, and the Lord was even preparing me for Torah. When I was 16, there was a Messianic Jew in our church that was doing side lessons on the holidays, the biblical holidays. So here I am, 16, and I'm being introduced to the biblical holidays. And, it's just kind of more of an interesting thing at the time. But after my dad remarried, and then after a few years ended up getting another divorce and remarrying my mom for a second time out of his conviction. And that marriage lasted for a couple of years, and they ended up getting a divorce again. So now I'm 16, 17, and been really fired up for the Lord. I mean, I spent all my time in my room with, this is before internet, so I've got my New King James Bible here, and I've got my concordance, and I've got my Webster's 1828 dictionary, and I'm just doing serious biblical studies from 12 years on up to 17. I mean, I was just so into it. And then after our parents got a divorce that second time, I think I started to question my faith. Lord, what's going on? I thought you were bringing our family back together. And about that same time, 17, my parents had put me in a really good Christian school for a few years that taught me how to self-educate and to study myself. So I was always digging in and on whatever subject I was interested in. And I met my wife in high school when I was 17. We were just kind of a group of friends. And then when 18 hit, I just needed to get out of the house. My dad remarried a fourth time by the time I was 18. And I just needed to get away. I needed to get out of the home. I think sometimes we got to get out of our problems, and I didn't really know what to do, but I knew I didn't want to waste any time. So I joined the Navy and got some good technical training and didn't really consult anyone on it. I came home one day and it's like, hey, I joined the Navy. I leave in 2 weeks, and boom, I'm off in the Navy. And then during that time, I'd come home and visit friends, when I have leave, and I ended up catching up with my future wife again. And she was going to school at University of Arkansas, going in for nursing. And whenever I drive back home from the East Coast, because I live here in Texas, North Dallas at that time, and my wife and I started kind of dating remotely, and as I'm deployed during Desert Storm and stuff, I guess my letters to her when I'm overseas start getting a little bit more romantic the further you're deployed out to sea, and so when I got out of the service, I ended up going back to North Texas, and I realized now I was probably chasing my girlfriend. She by then had transferred to University of Texas at Arlington, and I ended up moving down there as well. And her and I relationship started becoming a lot more serious. And after dating for about 4 years, we decided to get married, and we both took it very serious. We took marriage as a very serious covenant.
This episode of the Life Podcast is sponsored by WholeBibleCommunity.com, a social network for Torah observers. It's for fellowships, it's for individuals, it's for businesses. The idea is to connect them all, give them a place to communicate on the platform. There's a messaging app. There is soon a video communication app. And one of the new features that has been added is a feast day finder. So you can go on there and find public feast days that are being celebrated, Passover, Sukkot, unleavened bread, all these things, where a fellowship or people are hosting something and they're inviting everyone to come. It is made to connect you and also protect you. That's why you don't have to share all your personal details on there. And some new features that Matthew has added, because he heard some of your feedback, is that you can now sign up and you can instead of just putting in your address or having your location data being turned on, you can just choose a place on the map, anywhere of where you want to put yourself, so that you can be protected and your location can be protected. And then if you're a fellowship, you can, of course, put it right on your third-party location where you meet so that people can, find it. But for individuals, you can put the pin wherever you want, get past that step, sign up, and find people who are doing the same thing you're doing. Soon there will be this business marketplace where you can find businesses to work with. So the team is constantly working away, and they're really improving this. Go to wholebiblecommunity.com and sign up. Add me as a friend.
Yeah, I got really serious, and she actually broke up with me because it became that time in our relationship. It's like, we need to either get married or we need to break up. And I remember going through the checklist I had of like, what would be the perfect wife? And I realized that was her, and there was no way I could pass that up. I could never take the chance of passing that up. And her and I went into marriage very intentionally, and because between the two of us, we had experienced at this time in our life about 7 marriages. And we realized that we would never do that to our kids, and this is in the mid to late 80s, when I guess divorce becomes popular even in the Christian church, and so we went in it with the complete intention that we're in this for life and through thick or thin. And, we've been married over 30 years, and, there's hard times, but you get through it, and you persevere. And I guess that's what the greatest fruit I have to show for my walk is 2 beautiful girls that are now women that have married 2 beautiful, great guys. I have some great son-in-laws in my marriage. That's the fruit. I'm now a grandfather with 2 other granddaughters, and we didn't pass those generational sins on to our kids. They didn't have that baggage. And I'm so grateful for it, because they make, both of my girls are young ladies now, and they just have a great head on their shoulders and making great decisions. And we raised them in Torah, even though we didn't know what we were doing at the time. So stepping back a little bit, after I got out of the service, I decided to get into horticulture, and I've always been an entrepreneur. My wife and I have always worked together. We've had 3 or 4 different businesses throughout our career, and I got into horticulture. It's interesting because I see a lot of veterans getting into agriculture after serving, and it's like, here we have a career of destruction, and now we have a career of cultivation and caring for life. It's like the complete opposite. And I know I didn't realize it at the time, but it's very therapeutic for our soul, and so I had gotten into horticulture, and we had this dream of having a small family farm, and we also had a dream that we would have some ministry in supporting marriages. We didn't know what that was going to look like, but we knew that was important to us. And we had this vision to help people grow food, because I was seriously into growing food. We had a retail nursery in McKinney, Texas, and got into organic agriculture. And one of the other things that was on our heart is we wanted to have a small family farm. We thought that we would do that overseas, helping people like as a missionary purpose. And my idea of mission in our ideas is like, it wasn't to be like an evangelist missionary, but a missionary that did things for people. Think of like mercy ships and, these kind of organizations that actually like impact people's physical lives, and while I was studying horticulture and we were trying to work this out in our minds, what that would look like, and we're just praying to God, please, give us direction. And I came across a couple of nonprofit organizations that did missionary work in agriculture. One of them was Echo International out in Fort Myers, Florida, and another one was World Hunger Relief in Waco, Texas. And we were in the process of trying to sell our business, thinking that we'd be going overseas. And at that point, for the first 5 years, everyone was just knocking on the door, wanting to buy our place. And then all of a sudden, when we're ready to sell, no one's knocking on the doors anymore. And I'm like, Lord, what's going on? I thought we were supposed to go overseas. And we were at a really important part in our spiritual walk where we found a pastor online. And now we're talking about like dial-up internet, and this is about 1998, just before the first Y2K prepping, the first round of prepping that we experienced. And we started studying the Bible every day for an hour. We made a determination that we weren't going to go to bed until we had our hour Bible study every day. And we started working through the Bible chapter by chapter and verse by verse. And that's when it's just like, wow, things are challenging us. And this isn't what we taught in church. And we're reading about the law and reading about Sabbath and reading about the warnings of the unbiblical holidays. And I think that was the first thing that awakened us was the holidays, because now we had children. Our first daughter was just a year old, and we celebrated that first Christmas with family. And we were like, the Lord was starting to touch our heart. Like, why are you doing these holidays? And so that started to convict us, and just the holidays, and we didn't want to participate in them anymore. And then the food laws, and that was kind of an easy one for us, actually, because my wife is so much into health and nutrition. She was like, oh, yeah, it's easy. It's like, oh, we didn't have the conflict with pork or bacon given up like most people did. That was pretty easy for us. But then it was the Sabbath, and our business kept us from doing the Sabbath because it operated on a retail market, on the weekends. And it was just like our whole business depended on Saturday and Sunday sales. And so that was just struggling with us for years. And here we are learning about not doing the holidays. And then we're learning about the Sabbath, which is hard for us to keep, but we didn't know about what are we supposed to do. And we had a great Bible teacher that was helping us get through the scripture. And they were pointing out that not to do those holidays, but they weren't telling us what to do. Later on, we find out about the biblical holidays. And I think that was meaningful for us because our children were just born and we knew that we needed to create new family traditions. So this is our opportunity. It's like, okay, we're not going to do Easter and Christmas, but what are we going to do as a family? So that's when we started delving into the biblical holidays. During that process, we did end up selling our business in McKinney, Texas. And that was, at the time, it was like one of the fastest growing cities in the country. North Dallas is just exploding. 10 years later, it's the number one bankruptcies in the country. It's just a weird environment. North Dallas has exploded so much. It's just crazy. And we had to get out of there. We didn't want to raise our kids in suburbia. We were in suburbia, but now Dallas was expanding and it was becoming a huge city. Literally, when we opened our business across the street, Home Depot and Lowe's opens up that same year. So that's why we were trying to get out of there. We didn't want to raise our kids in that suburbia environment. And one of the reasons, too, is because when we were going to high school there in Plano, it was one of the top teenage suicide rates in the country. And there was a lot. We didn't realize at the time, I was a little naive, but there's a lot of drugs going on. And basically, we had kids that were in a good position, maybe upper middle class, but our parents weren't there. We weren't being supervised as kids as a whole, and so we were seeing a lot of the problems, and we just didn't want to. We were intentionally trying to raise our family outside of that kind of environment. And we wanted to raise our kids on a small farm. Of course, we were thinking it was going to be overseas. And as I was preparing to sell our business, I met the folks at World Hunger Relief. I was actually donating stuff to them as I was cleaning up my greenhouses and such. And they ended up offering me a job as operations director and farm manager. We were actually thinking we'd spend some time there just to prepare us overseas. This was an organization that was started about 40 years ago, and it was to equip people in the agriculture prior to going overseas. Even if you weren't involved in agriculture, you would be working with communities that are agrarian based. So it's important to be familiar with that. So we would have graduate interns that would come and spend a year with us, and the idea that they would spend 9 months on the farm and then go work 3 months at a farm that we were sponsoring in Haiti. And actually, I think that program should have been reversed. 3 months in Haiti, and then you come back realizing you're not knowing everything and you take it all serious. But we had an organic CSA. We got it up to about 80 members. We had a grade A goat dairy. We raised pecan orchard. We raised sheep. We raised rabbits. World Hunger Relief wasn't a Torah observant community, but it was very deeply embedded in agriculture. And here I found myself, I had 10 years experience in horticulture and knowing how to grow things. And all my other ideas of farming was all book knowledge, Joel Salatin and Andy Lee and all those guys. And so here I was responsible to teach all this, even processing animals on the farm and all that stuff. So I was really becoming more equipped to be a farmer. And during that time there at World Hunger Relief, we would have 4,000 or 5,000 people come visit that farm every year, and a lot of them school kids. And I was just becoming aware that people were had no idea where their food came from. And like children would be afraid. Some of them would be afraid to even gather eggs, or I'd walk them up to the dairy and it says dairy on the wall. And I'm like, what do y'all think happens here? And they don't have a clue. What's milk? This is where milk comes from.
This podcast is also sponsored by the Life Network. We've been calling it Biblically Clean Streaming. We've been calling it Torah Observant Netflix. What is it? What it really is a way to remap the landscape of the entertainment industry, not only for you and your children, but for their children, so that they won't have only perverse options to choose from. They won't have to choose between the maybe subliminally explicit Disney cartoons and the definitely explicit Netflix shows. They will be able to choose entertainment that aligns with their values and also does not spare on story and quality. That is our vision. It is a big vision. It's difficult to do. It's a startup business. It's being built in real time. We're editing these shows every day. We're filming these shows every week. We're putting out content every month. Each show, like Groundwork, a Homestead Tour show, it comes out every month. 2x2, a matchmaking show, it comes out every month. Katie's Ladies Talk Show, it comes out every month. Now we have Jackson Pollock making his Mr. Fritter shows, which is a kids show that comes out every month. But during the month of April, he's going to have a show every single week. Boom, 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 boom. They're hilarious. He plays all these different characters. I can't wait for you guys to see this. The greatest thing about becoming like a founding member of this and helping us build the foundation of it is that you guys get to decide what we make. So you can use your brains and what you want to see, and you can force our bodies to do it. We did a poll and people voted. They voted for Kids Show the most. Cooking Show was pretty close though. So next month we're going to do a poll and we're going to say, do you guys want a cooking show or do you want this or that? And we'll pitch 2 other ideas. And we'll see what people vote for, and then we'll start in the process of making the next thing. So none of this can happen without you guys building the foundations of it. Everyone that we've been working with so far is Torah observant. The editors, our videographer, Dawson Schmidt, the ladies that are programming the site, is all ladies that are programming the site. They're killing it, by the way. Oh, we're getting a Roku app soon. So that's in the works. If you were on the fence because you thought, oh, they don't have Roku, well, we're going to have it. Thanks to Brittany. She's building it right now. So go to watchthelife.com and you can sign up. You can sign up for a month. You can sign up for a year. If you become a premium subscriber, then you can meet with Katie and I once a month on these live streams that we do. And we will send you this unbelievably beautiful mug that says Choose Life. Go to watchthelife.com and become part of this movement to move away from taking whatever Hollywood will hand us. Or any nice little, family-friendly movie they decide that they'll make every 10 years. Let's make our own thing. Let's make this happen. And if any of your children are artistic and want to work in this industry, then help build the foundation of something that maybe can employ them in the future. Go to watchthelife.com.
How old were they?
All age groups. From the 8th graders were the cool ones. They're the ones that weren't afraid to do stuff. But all the way from high school. And because we were outside of Baylor, we even had a lot of college kids coming to volunteer. The whole farm was run on volunteers and my interns. I was the only paid staff that I felt like needed to earn the income. I needed to earn my income. What right did I have to teach people farming if I was not earning my salary farming? I have to be a successful farmer to show. So that was my thing. I always wanted to prove it by doing it. And a couple of years on my time there, I realized, I'm really more equipped to teach people farming in Texas than I am overseas. So at that point, we decided we're going to start a small farm in Texas. And there was an article I read by Dr. Martin Price at Echo International, kind of talking about how to go into a community and not go in there and tell them what you're going to do, but show them what you're doing. How can we teach farmers what to do and ask them to take the risk to do something that they're not used to doing? This is their livelihood, especially in a third world country. So there became this model, what I called a small farm development center, where we replicated the ways to do things on the farm, and you invite farmers to come to your farm to see what you're doing and the success that it is, and show them even your failures, and where you're not asking them to take the risk until they've seen a successful model of it. And with that business model that I kind of expected to be doing in Central America, that's what we started to do in Texas. And it took us 2 years to find our property. We ended up in Washington County, Texas, kind of in the heart. I'm in the birthplace of Texas. We called it the Triangle in Texas, Central Texas, where you're in this triangle between Dallas, Houston, Austin, San Antonio. And we're in a rural environment, about 90 minutes, from any of those major metroplexes. But that was a good location to be because we needed to have a market. We closed on our property in November, and I was in the market rolling by March that spring. And we were going to start a CSA, and we ended up starting a CSA program. That's a community-supported agriculture program. We basically had families that would subscribe to our farm for a weekly delivery of produce. And it started out that first season with like 26 families, and the next season it doubled, and it kept doubling. And before I knew it, we started the first CSA for the Houston Metroplex, and still to this day is the largest CSA in the Houston Metroplex, probably the largest in Texas. We were serving 380 families every single week, along with restaurants. During that process, I was mentoring other farmers. I was throwing workshops on my farm. We were hosting a farmers market every Sunday, not Saturday. At this time, we were celebrating the Sabbath. We were observing the Sabbath, started our farm around our beliefs. We still didn't have any mentors. We didn't have anyone showing us how to do the holidays or what are you supposed to do on the Sabbath. It was just our family at home, alone in the wilderness. But we were living it out. And during that time, I got very involved politically, even because there was a lot of policies that were going through that was challenging local farms. So I ended up becoming active. And next thing I know, I'm the president of the Texas Organic Farmers Association, and I'm organizing workshops all over the state, and I'm organizing big conferences, and I'm speaking at conferences all across the South. And and I was always this shy, introverted person, and we had prayed for boldness, and now here I am organizing conferences and speaking in front of 1,000 people, and just fired up about farming and living out our faith. And I had families, that had been customers of ours for 10, 15 years, kids that are growing up on our food, understanding where their food comes from, people that are buying food in the most radical way, direct from a farmer, home delivery. I mean, who buys food like that? So all these people have found us through the internet, and all these people were different races, different levels of education. It was the only common thing that everybody wanted was good, clean food. And in order to do that, I started mentoring other farmers. I had 20 other farmers working with us. I mean, we were providing eggs and beef and chicken and cheese and produce, and I was having other farmers helping me grow produce as well. I couldn't grow it all. And then I have a had a walk-in cooler. I'm providing refrigeration for multiple farmers. We're doing all the sales, marketing, and distribution for about 20 other small family farms all around us. And a lot of them were doing it for faith reasons, the same reasons that we were, all of us homeschooling our kids and living out our faith in every way that we could. And some people would be like, how come y'all aren't doing your market on Saturday? And, and that's when people would start to question us because they're seeing how we're living out our lives. And that would give us the opportunity to share, I guess. But during that time, we're out in the wilderness. We don't have any fellowship as far as our faith in observing the Torah. We didn't have anyone to share the holidays with. We didn't have any families to get together with during Shabbat. And then two of our customers that were regular local customers, most of our stuff is going to Houston, but one of our local customers, he was starting to pay us with like junk silver. And so he kind of saying, I was like, my wife, Jenny, calls me. She's like, hey, we got this new customer and he wants to buy a dozen eggs for a silver dime. I'm like, well, that's weird. And I'm like, well, a silver dime, that's worth like $3 or $4. I was like, go ahead, sell it to him. So he was one of the guys that was standing out in our group of 380 customers, buying meat and stuff with silver every week. And then notice one day he's wearing seats. And I'm like, hey, you're wearing seats. Are you doing the Torah? Are you following the Torah? And he's like, yeah. And then later on, my wife's talking to another lady in our group, and that comes up again too. She's like, hey, I noticed y'all don't work on Shabbat. Are y'all keeping the Torah? And we're like, yeah. And so those were the first three families where we started our home group. We're like, hey, if you're doing Torah, we're doing Torah. I mean, are y'all meeting with anyone? And we realized, well, this is it. We can meet together. And, and that's my idea of church now, where two or three are come together, the Lord's there, and that's home church, or we call it home fellowship. But so we started meeting on the weekends. We would all take turns actually hosting it in our homes. We would kind of, all right, this month we'll host it. You host it. Next month we'll host it. And we kind of rotated around that. And, we have families that would come and go and, families that would move, and some people we've seen our home fellowship through the years. That was 2012. We've seen it go up and down. Some families come, some families go, they move. Sometimes it gotten real big where we could hardly contain people in the living room. And then I guess the normal thing would be let's start a church. And we were never interested in doing that. Getting a church building and going into debt and creating ministries. I mean, it would just change the dynamics, I think, of what we wanted. We really enjoyed families gathering together, being a part of one another's lives, just being involved with each other's lives so much closer than any of us had experienced in church, And there's much more accountability even. So we were just all kind of making it up as we go. We would follow some work studies. Jenny and I really relied on, at the time, there's a lot of wacky stuff out there in the Torah movement, so we go back and forth trying to find things, and some stuff would just get wacky. And we were really grounded with Tim Hegg over at Torah Resource. He was really a good resource for us. I felt like Tim really kind of mentored us more than anybody. He's retired now, but some real grounding on the foundation of our faith, and there's so much division in the Torah movement. We're all skeptical people, and we're all critical thinkers. I mean, we're to be in the Torah movement, you got to think outside of the box to begin with, so we're all unique individuals in this Torah movement. But I think we have a problem where we also separate ourselves too much over things that are non-necessary. We need to focus more on unity. The calendar, the biblical holidays are meant for us to come together and create unity. It's not to create more division. We can argue about, some things that are really kind of silly that are separating us, but like, how do we pronounce God's name? And and how do you keep the holiday, and how long are your seats and all this stuff. And it's like, we need to focus on what brings us together, not on these things that divide us. And actually, we've had people leave our home fellowships because of things like that. And, we want to get beyond that. It's been 12 or about 15 years now. And we've changed a lot. And we have a lot of people contact us. Jay and Paula Carper are some of our best friends that started the community with us. And Jay's been very active online with his Common Sense Bible Study and American Torah. So people reach out to us and they're looking for home fellowship, but I think it's something that we all experience. We're hours away from one another. So especially when we're living in a rural environment, I think a lot of us in this Torah movement have moved out to rural environments, and we're out here in this wilderness, and we're all alone, and fellowship becomes difficult because we're an hour or two away from one another. And, you might be able to meet quarterly or for a holiday or special event, but it's hard to meet regularly. And it's absolutely necessary. We found that Torah is meant to be shared, and you can't observe Torah completely without fellowship. Our number one priority is our families and our marriages, and to get our homes in order. But then we have to be outside of that. We have to be a part of a larger community, and that's what we're needing. I think that's what we all struggled with. That's what we all. A lot of us are hurting inside because we're all alone, and we don't need to be. And so that's what's recently been coming up with. We've realized that we need to encourage people to have home fellowships. And like currently right now, we're trying to mentor 4 other home fellowships to be set up in our area that are an hour away from us. And we realize we need to equip people to do that because we're intimidated to start home fellowship. And the number one thing we found, there's like 3 areas that we need to focus on. And one of them is hospitality. Just the gift of hospitality again, just opening our doors up to others. Hospitality is one of the greatest gifts, and it's absolutely essential for home fellowship. So we need to mentor people for the gift of hospitality again. Now, this whole internet age, we might be on internet groups or what we think of internet communities, but that's not the same as personal one-on-one fellowships. And we've almost lost the gift of hospitality because we're all in this internet world now, this wireless world. And how do you really know when your brother's in need? The internet's not real, but we really know we're in need when we're with one another, and so that's been interesting. And the next thing is mentoring folks to be teachers. There's got to be a teacher in the home fellowship, and we're all teaching one another. And we do kind of a midrash, at our home fellowship where we read the portion that week and we all open it up for discussion, and Jay or I might take turns kind of leading that discussion, but we really want people to be a part of it and answer questions. And then we might we always spend time eating a meal together. And then we might also then spend time either continuing in the portion or on a certain subject or a certain book in the New Testament that we're working on. Every home fellowship looks different. But then we need to also recognize who our elders are. There's just people that have walked in the faith longer than others. And I think when you're in a home fellowship in a small knit community over there, it's not like, hey, this guy's the elder. It just happens. It just is a natural to recognize that, there's someone a little bit more experienced in our group that we can all value that experience in natural life. Our group kind of looks to me and Jay now as our elders. And I was like, I don't think I was any way to even be considered that until I was in my 50s. I needed life experience. I've raised kids now. I've had multiple businesses. Like I said, look at my fruit, look at my kids, and I'm like, when it came to me, it's like, Brad, you could be one of our elders. I'm like, I was kind of intimidated by the idea of that. But then I realized, the Lord has kind of put us in that position now after this Torah walk that we've had for about 30 years. And we still don't know it all. It's not important for elders to know it all, but it's an experience to have those age groups. And I think that's important too in home fellowship is we incorporate all age groups. We want the kids involved. We want the younger kids to see parents, adults discussing the Bible, and this is part of discipleship and them just hearing the word and hearing adults talking about it, and their attention span might not be there that whole time, but we try to accommodate that. And not always do we have small kids in our home fellowship, and sometimes we do, but we think it's important not to compartmentalize and separate everything like the church tend to do. It's like, we got men's group, we got women's group, we got youth group, we got children's group. How do we incorporate the youth now to the adults? Or once they become adults, they don't feel like they fit in, and then they end up leaving the church altogether. And we feel like a lot of that can be avoided just by not segregating everybody that we're together, So that's been kind of interesting as well. And I think now that we've taken it on where it's kind of our mission, I think it's also important for home fellowships to have an outreach, and I think we're taking that more intently now, and that's where we've come up now with what we're calling Abrams 3:18. And the idea of that is, the story of Abram and Lot, and that's a whole nother story, is Lot. I see Lot as the end time church today, that he just moved away from Abraham and started dwelling closer to the cities, even so much where he takes his kids and goes to Sodom and Gomorrah, even though it had a reputation of sin, and gets caught up in a war that's going on and becomes captive, and drawn away. And when that one escapes and goes and tell Abram, hey, Lot, and is gotten captive by the enemies here, and Abram takes his trained 318 men that weren't a part of his bloodline, but men that had attached to him and were a part of his tribe, and he had invested in them and trained them, and he sends them out in groups at night and destroys the enemy to redeem his kinsmen, to bring them back to the fold. And that kind of hit us. It's like, that's what we need to do. We have all of our brethren that are lost in this wilderness without any kind of fellowship, and we need to have trained men that can bring them in, to bring them back to Torah, to bring them back to fellowship, and to not be captivated by the world around us, but to be embracing one another as brothers and sisters. And that's where Abrams 3:18 is, or at least that's what we got out of the meaning of that name. But that's what we're wanting to do, and we're currently doing it right now with 4 families around us, to equip them to start their home fellowships, and then for us to support them and to come up with a group of resources to help them teach in home fellowships and to feel more comfortable teaching, and for them to realize they're not doing it on their own, and it doesn't have to be perfect. I think people put up having home fellowship just because of the scary idea of it, that we don't know what we're doing. And it's not about doing something right. It's just about just start doing it, And I think that's what Abrams 3:18 is turning into right now, is that for us to have the ability to encourage people to do home fellowships, when people contact us in the future, to be able to have home fellowships that can recommend them to start bridging that gap. There's a lot of families that are on the bridge to Torah. We're keeping Shabbat. We understand with the biblical holidays, but now we need to get over that bridge and start doing it with fellowship with one another. It's time to start living it out, taking our faith in Torah to the next level, where we're building a community around us. And some people can find that, it's more common in other parts of the country, but there's a lot of parts of the country where we're all out in the wilderness with nowhere to go. And I think we need to have an ability to find ourselves and to build up home fellowship so we can be in fellowship. Right now, we're just right at the beginning of it, and I reached out to you. We met you at the Ruckus, and to be a part of a big group like that with so many Torah observant folks is just so inspiring. And to see us all taking action, doing something, not just talking about our faith, but doing something. And so during that time right now, we've been reaching out to men to we're putting together an advisory board. We found some great men, and everybody that we've introduced this vision to has been ready to get on board. I think it's really going to take off, and I feel like the spirit is really, it's something that is needed for us today. Absolutely.
Cool. Well, let me see if I can restate what Abrams 318 is, and then I'll ask you a couple questions, and you can tell me if I get this right. So basically, you started your own group, and you realized there's not much guidance out there in the world for us who are starting home fellowships, who are Torah observers. And so you thought, all right, I'm used to doing things. I'm going to help create a kind of guidebook or rubric or something, or some kind of framework for people to do this successfully. And that was Abrams 318. Is that right? Generally?
Yeah, that's the vision of it, for us to be able to share that and mentor folks, mentor home fellowships, and to help them along the way. And we're all going to experience similar struggles and similar challenges. And we don't need to reinvent the wheel, but we need to have resources like, how do I deal with this? Or we need advice, and we need to have experienced leaders that can give advice, and to provide a resource out there for home fellowships. And, we never had that. We're not doing this alone, and we've learned from our experience. So I think it's time for us to share that.
So, okay, so far in your experience and as you're putting this together, can you talk about some of the most common challenges that a group will run into, and then maybe eventually how you solved those?
Well, we're always working out challenges, and all of them are unique. But like one of the biggest common ways is just logistics. I mean, that's the biggest one to get over, is just logistically making it happen. Families, like I said, are extremely far apart. So we need to find, we don't want people traveling more than ideally 30 minutes to get to a fellowship, or, most of us are still taking an hour to get to fellowship. But the idea of Shabbat is supposed to be a day of rest. We don't want it to be 4 hours on the road, driving to and from fellowship, and that ends up becoming one of the most stressful days, gathering your family and all that. So logistics is a big thing to overcome, at least for us here in this rural area. The other one is like being able to stay on track, keeping with just the weekly Torah portion. The whole Torah community is basically on track because we're all studying the same Torah portion every week. And that brings a lot of unity right there. Sometimes people will come to a fellowship and they might have their own agenda. They might not have to understand what the fellowship is all about. It's not about some off subject, about the shape of the earth or anything like that. It's about, so some people have their agendas about those things. So let's stay centered and focused on the Torah portion, and let's focus on what is real, not about the mysteries out there that we can't necessarily know about. I'm comfortable with mystery. I know that I can't understand the complete mind of God. Our human brains can't be that. I am more than comfortable with mystery now in this part of my walk. The other thing is how to incorporate kids. Not every fellowship is going to have children, but to have children at different ages, but like to have some things for kids to do while we're doing the Torah portion, maybe a coloring book, or invite them to memorize scripture that they can share with us for them to get involved. So to find things have the kids involved. And it's nice also to have a home fellowship if it's at a place, someone's home where there's outdoor space, so we can like let the kids get up after and run around a little bit, but to make it family comfortable for all families to be there. And the other thing is, it's important, we think, to what we've learned through all this experience, is to also, when someone contacts you and they're interested in meeting with your fellowship, is that these people need to be vetted before you bring them into your home. And that we've avoided a lot of problems since we've started to vet people before they actually come into home. You got to think about a home as a very intimate place, and needs to be a very safe place. And it's also important to be very considerate of the hosts of that home. So we want to, in every way, avoid problems from the very beginning, and home fellowship isn't necessarily the right thing for everyone. And so when someone contacts us, one of our elders will first invite that person to coffee or a lunch or something like that, so we can get to know that person and what are they interested in and what are they looking for and where are you at in your walk right now, and to understand this person, to see if they were even going to be a fit for our home fellowship, because if they're not, it's not good for anybody. We don't want them coming expecting one thing that we're not. We're not a church. You're not going to get a sermon. You're not going to we're not going to have a youth group program, those kind of things. So we have to, explain all that. And again, some people, like I said, just wouldn't be a good fit, and you're going to avoid a lot of problems just by vetting that out from the very beginning. And then also, like, when we are in fellowship together, part of it is like with food. Everybody has to understand that we want to bring biblical clean food to the fellowship, so it's a place we don't even have to worry about that, but we got to you can't take it for granted. Some people that are new to this, don't understand, we're down here in Texas, and, we eat a lot of tacos and tamales, but it might be chicken tamales, but it's still made with pork lard, so it's like, it's that kind of thing. We need to be very, even teach people on the dietary laws. And that's what's interesting in the book of Acts, is like, how do we bring these Gentiles in? It's like, well, one of it is, the food is one thing, don't be eating food from strangled animals. I mean, but we understood what they were talking about with food, what clean food is. I mean, it's absolutely essential to have a Torah fellowship. Food is essential, and food is important. I mean, I look back at the Garden of Eden, the first laws in place was Sabbath, created right there at nature. The other one is love the Lord your God. I mean, Adam and Eve are walking the garden in complete communion with God. And the only thing that separated them from that is when they broke a food law. They had one thing: don't eat the fruit of that tree. It began with a food law. So I don't know. We might not think it's important, but it's important to God, and it drove us away from being in fellowship with Him. So it is that important. So those are kind of things that you have to understand. And part of it is through the vetting process. They have to understand what they're getting into, and that sort of thing. And then another thing that, like, sometimes it's important for that elder or that teacher to be trained in that home fellowship. So when someone does come in and they might have a different agenda, and that might be to, something that, and so some of the discussions that come up can be held for a later time, but it doesn't need to disrupt the fellowship when we're focusing on Torah. So it's important for the elders or the teacher just to learn how to keep everybody on track a bit. It's not like some of those discussions can't come up later, or we can talk about it after this session, or, hey, maybe we need to go and have lunch and we can talk about that more. Actually, that's what fellowship allows. That's what we want. But sometimes certain subjects just aren't necessarily appropriate at that time. So you need to be trained to just like, hey, that's cool. Let's talk about that later, but let's bring back in and stay focused, And so for the sake of the meeting, of the gathering, you need to be able to stay focused a little bit. And then, we've had a big problem once where I feel like someone came into our fellowship to actually break the fellowship up, and we didn't realize at the beginning of what was going on. And until it was almost too late, and we learned from that, and we lost a lot of folks because, someone intentionally came in, I felt like, to break us apart, for their own purpose. And so that needs to be avoided. And I think we've gained enough experience now that we recognize that a lot quicker than we did at that time. But And that's again when it comes to Abrams 3:18 with our ideas is that I think I lost Luke.
Okay, we're back, Brad. Sorry about that.
Sounds good. So I was talking about Abrams 3:18, and again, I think one of the pitfalls of traditional church, or what a common thing is some dispute or something goes up, and then the church ends up splitting, over pastor this way or whatever, and it's like common. I mean, that's like common business in the church business, right? Is church splits. And that's what I think is critical in the Torah movement, that we put a system in place that we don't split. We procreate. And that's what Abrams 3:18 is all about. To be able to mentor people, to have successful home fellowships, and then within that home fellowship, we're mentoring future hosts and teachers to propagate and start another home fellowship. So when a home fellowship begins to get too big, and typically that could be when you get 7 families or more, it becomes physically difficult to meet now in this home. And we're not going to split because we have a disagreement, but we're going to procreate intentionally and plant another home church or home fellowship, I'm saying. And because elders and teachers, and we're spending time to mentor and train up future hosts and teachers, when we get to that size, now we have people already equipped to go and start another home fellowship, hopefully 30 minutes away. And we start becoming a fellowship of home fellowships. And that's what we think Abrams 3:18 is going to turn into, where we can connect people to home fellowships. Right now we're starting in Texas, but I imagine it's going to be all over the country. And these home fellowships are going to be safe places where people have already been vetted, and it's going to be a healthy experience for everyone. And I think that's kind of thinking outside of the box, because separation and division is so common in our world and culture today, where instead we've got a mission, and that mission of Abrams 3:18 is to gather our kinsmen back together and to train those next group of men to go out and to continue to plant home fellowships throughout the community.
I think that's great. It's hard to do because everyone wants to hang out together, and so when you add too many and you get too big for a home, it's like, well, these two have to split off and they can't hang out every week. That's the hard part. But it's a good idea, though.
No, I see that. But also, we're still getting together. We still get together in larger groups for holidays, in the festivals. We still get together on just community events outside of Shabbat. Like, for example, my wife and I, we decided, once a month on a Sunday outside of Shabbat, we're going to have a barbecue over at our place, and everybody's invited. So we have everybody from multiple home fellowships still coming together for events like that. So we still are cultivating community, but we want to, yeah. And that's why the biblical holidays are there. We've been told to gather together. That's bigger than just the people in our home and outside, our home fellowship. That's a bigger gathering, and here we are, we're coming up on Passover, and we know Passover is to be celebrated in our home, but we're supposed to invite people to our home, and then when it comes to Sukkot, it's common for us to, we found a campground on the river, and we could have 100 people show up there if everybody wanted to show up there, so there still is opportunity to have greater gatherings. But also that home fellowship, we have found that it just when it gets too big, it also can create problems that you don't want, and so we avoid it by having more intention on growth,
That's great. Can you talk about some of the guidance that you're putting together under Abrams 318 for groups? What will this look like? What kind of documents, or what are you doing?
Well, right now we're starting to post articles on what are the different roles in a home fellowship. I touched on a little bit. We need a host, we need a teacher, and we need elders. Some of those elders might even, because we're planning other home fellowships, some of those elders might go and be visiting other home fellowships and being a guest at that home fellowship, and that provides encouragement for that home fellowship. They're like, we can't do this alone. Oh, well, Jay or I will be there to help you when y'all meet. And when that new home fellowship might not, when they're just starting out, they might not meet every week, but they might meet every other week. It could be anything, every home fellowship can be different, but it's kind of a support group in that network. And like I said, we're putting articles up that'll be like talking about those roles and giving guidances and what are we looking in it for in an elder. And then we'll start talking about very specific things like what we've been talking about here is like how to vet people and how to avoid this certain situation, because we're all going to experience it. And then what also we're helping, and I'm hoping to announce real soon, is that we have some very reputable men that we're bringing in as a part of our advisory council, and we're hoping that they'll also submit articles and such about their experiences. So there's a lot of information already out there. We're just trying to gather it together for a focus on home fellowships and to like create this one resource. And later on, we hope to even add more technology where we can put a map up there and people can start seeing communities around that could be closer to us. You can or closer to them, and giving people the abilities to find one another. There's some resources out there right now, but they're not kept up to date. 119 has a great map of that people have put out there, but when we've reached out to some of those people on that map, it's just not current. So we have to keep some current information as well. But
what they don't have is guidance for fellowships like what you're putting together. And that is necessary because you can find a fellowship, but if it's not being properly run, it's not going to survive. And it may not be a good environment.
Yeah, exactly. So I think with Abrams 318, we start to create a standard, I guess. So people expect similar things. Every home fellowship is going to be different, a different flavor. I mean, that's fine. We love, I'm an artist. I love creativity and expression of our faith. And the Lord actually, gives us room for creativity, like seat seats, for example. Let's not argue about seat seats, how you're going to wear seat seats, how long your seat seats is. The Lord has given us a creative expression there. He only said one thing. That's a thread that has to have a blue thread in there. That's it, So let's not argue about that, And I think that's what our guidance is going to be, is like, what is the foundation of our faith? What are the things that we do have to all agree on, And all this other stuff can be set aside. It's not that it can't be important to you, but it shouldn't be used to isolate you or set yourself away from a fellowship. We need to focus on what unifies us as a body of Christ, the whole Bible fellowship, because I think that is some great technology as they get that up, and we're not going to look at reinventing the wheel. I mean, that might be the technology that we need to point people to,
It's purposed for it. So then they're continually improving. So I do hope it'll help people. But the guidance part is incredibly necessary. You can find each other, but if no one has experience or is willing to step up to lead a group, then it's going to flounder and it's not going to be a good experience for people. And then they're going to, oftentimes they'll just go back to whatever large messianic congregation there is around, or maybe a Sunday church that's around oftentimes. So that's why what you're doing is so important. And so what I was going to ask you is, maybe you've thought about this, maybe you haven't, but can you talk about how your past experience with the CSA management and managing all these small farms has helped prepare you to do this very mission?
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting. I used to always joke about it even when I was running the Texas Organic Farmer Association. And I've started other nonprofits, all related to farming. Some of them having to do more with political issues. But organizing farmers is a lot like organizing the Torah community. It's like herding cats. We're also independent and self-reliant. And I mean, these are all great traits. I mean, that's why we're here, but it's like herding cats, literally. And I kind of organized the same thing when I was working with Tafka. Is like I want to mentor and have a leader in every single county in the state of Texas. I mean, we were dealing with the same problems organizing farmers in the state of Texas because Texas logistically is so big, and East Texas is so different than West Texas, and people would come to me as the president, and I'd be like, I can't give you, I don't know your resources you have over there in Smith County, Texas, but I can connect you with this guy that I know's over there, and he can help you. And I realized we need to have leaders in every single county. It's more of a grass up. It's from a bottom up kind of a establishment, not top down. And I think that's what Abrams 318 is going to be as well. We want to empower people in local communities, not say, hey, it's not being organized by some management over here in some other state, So, yeah, that's what's very challenging, is just getting people on the same page. And I think, again, that's why those guidelines are essential, because there has to be some basic elements that we all agree on, and it doesn't mean that other topics and issues aren't important. It's just some things needs to be on a focus for unifying the body of Christ.
And these things are, I guess, what I'd call tree trunk issues or beliefs of the faith, like core elements.
Yeah, the core elements. We're talking about biblical holidays. We're talking about the Sabbath, Sunday Sabbath, or the seventh-day Sabbath. We're talking about, to me, what's important is the one law. I mean, we're all given one law, and also that we're grafted into Israel. Israel isn't just a political element over there in the Mideast. Israel is his people, grafted into a covenant made with Israel, and it's not replacement theology, and those are the core things that we need to be all agree on, and not necessarily a rapture theory. They're not absolutely like, how's the end times going to look? I mean, that's great to discuss eschatology. I mean, and it's fun. It's a fun subject, but it can also divide people. We don't need to divide on the day of the Lord. The day of the Lord is a day of hope, not a day of separation. So let's focus on what we do know, not the mysteries and all that.
Yeah, no branches, just tree trunk issues.
Yes, exactly.
But it's important that people are on the same page with those, because if they're not, it's like deal breakers where you have to say, well, this isn't the place for you. I'm sorry, you don't believe. The Bible is the word of Yah. You don't, that's one.
Yeah, especially like the Word of God. We focus on the weekly Torah portion, and we do drink, half Torah and gospel portions as well. We believe in the canonized Bible as we have it. The Old Testament and the prophets is the exact Bible they had in the first century. We can historically we know that's accurate, but. And then there's the Apocrypha, the extra books of the Bible. Well, no, that's interesting writing and very interested in reading, and we can gain a lot of it about historical facts and understanding the culture and stuff like that. But it's not the canonized Bible, so we're not going to teach on the Book of Enoch, and that might be important to you, but let's let's agree that that's the Canaanite Bible is what we need to focus on as a fellowship and as a community. All this extracurricular stuff is fine, but don't let it divide the unity of the fellowship,
I think this is very important. I think just a time and a place for certain conversations is important. And in our little group, I have often said, if someone brings something up like that's, I don't know, not to do with the canon, that's kind of controversial, that's a branch thing, I'll say this is man talk. We shouldn't discuss this in front of women and children, basically. And oftentimes women want to participate in those conversations. It'll just be not the thing that we do in the main group. And then afterwards, when we're all hanging out or whatever, we can have those conversations. But there's got to be a protected, we all agree on this stuff. This is what we can learn from. It's edifying for, all the things that scripture's edifying for. So yeah, that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's interesting off topics. I mean, I've been into them too. You walk this faith for 30 years, you delve into some things, but I'm not going to focus my core foundation on the mysteries that we can't be certain on, and, not the unseen realm, but the realm that we're here living in, and that's what's important. And that also those other off subjects can really become a stumbling block for younger people in faith, and so we don't want our brothers and sisters stumbling and or creating things in the way for them to stumble. And that's why, like you said, those other topics can be discussed, but in a different setting, and I'm happy it's like, hey, maybe through emails we can really dig in, maybe through a cup of coffee we can talk about that, or or maybe there's a men's group that can come up in a different kind of a group setting. But the purpose of us gathering for Shabbat is to share the word of God, the Torah, the scriptures that we have, and that's what we need to focus on, and discipling one another. And that's how it's just natural, that if you're in Torah, you're being discipled, studying scripture, especially chapter by chapter and verse by verse, and not arguing about doctrines of men, like you're saying. That's a doctrine of men. That's not what the Bible's saying. Let's focus on the word here, and that's what doctrines of men do. They divide us.
You're right. There are important core functions that one of these groups need to fulfill. And one of them is helping children be established properly in a powerful foundation of faith. The other one is guiding people and training them and discipling them, like you're saying. But I mean, one of the core functions is not to entertain mature believers. And I think that that's a huge problem in this movement, is that mature believers who already understand things, they're lacking fellowship oftentimes, so they want to go to the group to be entertained and to throw out their new theory. That's not what this is for, man. This is for edification of not just younger people or new people to the faith, but partly that. And then also the training of those and discipleship of those who are mature believers. But we cannot confuse those things, or else everything goes crazy. Everything goes haywire. And it becomes this bizarre meeting. No. You have to protect the core function of the group. And I love that that's what you guys are doing. As you can see, I'm passionate about this because we've run into all sorts of things with our own little group.
Yeah, and that's why that vetting process was important, because like you said, they got to understand, if we're going to bring you into our home fellowship, we're not providing entertainment. We are providing scripture study, chapter by chapter, together. And people aren't used to that. You're not encouraged in church to question things, or to, we're actually encouraging you to do what you're not encouraged to do in church. Wait, I have a question. Hey, what does that mean? Here we can personally discuss those things, and that's the purpose of it. And but again, let's stay focused on this portion this week. And So that vetting process is very important because, like I said, we're not providing entertainment. And that's the thing, though. I know some people need that, and I think there's ministries out there that can help people cross that bridge, and actually, now that you said that, that was when I was getting into Torah and I was trying to teach my children. I was so frustrated and even angry at myself and even angry at the church. I've gotten over that, but to think that I had been in church for 20 years and I didn't know any scripture. I don't know what I'm doing, and that's why this home fellowship and mentorship is important, because we're not brought up in the ways of the Lord. We don't know what to do, and instead we just, like you said, we're just looking for entertainment. And it's interesting too, because even now in this like internet age, we have less attention span. Even adults and children, our attention span is just completely depleted. I mean, we can't sit down for an hour and a half and talk scripture. We need to be entertained. And so we have to overcome that, and that's what discipleship is. We got to move beyond, when we come to this idea of, I should be keeping Shabbat, I should start doing these biblical holidays. That's the bridge into the faith. And now we have to cross the bridge and dwell with one another and have fellowship with one another and do these things together. And it's beautiful because, another question is like, well, how do we tithe? Well, that's such a church thing. And so when someone's new to us and that'll come up, it's like, well, how do y'all tithe? Some of us, we give to organizations, that have fed us, like my wife and I, our family, there's ministries that we give to regularly, but also it's in our home fellowship, we become aware of one another's needs. And this gives us a chance to bless one another. If, literally like people in our fellowship have been given a car because they needed a car. Someone's like, I have a car. If y'all need this car, you can have this car. That's a tithe. That's giving to those in need, and also we have a family right now that they want to be hosts in the future, and they need to make some upgrades to their bathroom because they're like, we'd love to have people over, but we can't do it because all this, hey, well, us as a fellowship, we're paying as a group, donating our labor, time, and money to remodel their bathroom for them, and that's helping them out. They have multiple children. This has been an obstacle that that they need to get over. They financially haven't been able to do it. Well, as a body, we're coming together and like, hey, we're going to take care of you. We want to see this happen for you, and we're not aware of one another's needs typically in a church like that because of pride and all that sort of things. We don't get personally connected with people, but when we are, we're aware of one another's needs. We can pray for one another. We can even financially support one another when needed, and that's beautiful. I mean, it's just, it's different than what we're taught in church, most of the time we're donating to a church to pay for their building expenses and their salaries. And then how much of that actually goes into service, and, well, here we can say 100% of what we give goes to the body of Christ, and that's a neat thing about home fellowship as well.
Yes, you're highlighting one of the most beautiful parts of this thing. Why it matters, because you are spending so long in such an intimate setting with these people that you get to know everything about their lives, and that helps you see where you can give directly to your core local group, and that is amazing. And you're right. We didn't have that in the larger churches, but that's because there were so many people. It's like, it's hard to really get to, and because the format where we weren't in people's homes knowing who they are intimately. But you also highlighted something else. I think one of the challenges, you're making me realize why it's hard or can be hard to have these beneficial conversations without going off onto different side topics. And it's because of the format as well. But okay, so we're not just getting up there and preaching. We're usually having one guy guiding the conversation, then people are commenting. I mean, I don't know if that's what you guys are doing, but I assume it might be. We're where there's a study or you're reading the Torah portion or whatever, and he's going through it, and then everyone has their commentary, etc. Is that similar to what you're doing?
Yeah, we've tweaked it a bit. We're doing it now much different than we did it in the beginning. At the beginning, no one was really the leader. We kind of just went through a kind of a group study together, and that's fine. I mean, everybody being on the same page. Today, what we do is we typically meet, let's say, about 1:00 in the afternoon. Shabbat, we feel like, is a day that everybody should rest and sleep in, and again, if you're traveling an hour to get there, imagine if you're meeting at 10:00 in the morning, that just makes it more difficult. So we typically meet at like about 1:00. We gather together. Everybody brings a dish to share. We do a little potluck meal. So we kind of start our meeting together with just getting a plate and everybody having a little meal and catching up with one another throughout the week. And then we sit down ideally about 1:30, 1:45, however long that takes. We don't have strict guidelines. But we have a Torah portion that week. We all know what the Torah portion is. You could do an annual cycle or you could do the 3-year cycle. We've done them both. Right now, we do a 1-year cycle, but there's so much scripture in the 1-year cycle. It's hard to cover it all in an hour. So I see a benefit to a 3-year cycle. But what we do right now, we do a 1-year cycle, but we focus on the third half, instead of the whole thing. We don't have to focus on all of it, but because of concern about time, we're going to focus on this portion. So everybody knows what portion we're going to focus on. And also we assume that everybody's already read it. Everybody's already read the Torah portion. We used to read the whole Torah portion together as a group, but we're like, man, we could spend an hour just reading this thing before we ever talk about it. So we've kind of shortened that a little bit. Let's read a smaller portion and focus on a smaller portion of it. And that usually always takes about an hour and a half if there's really something to dig into. And if you're asking the kids to sit there and maybe they're doing a coloring book or to participate at all, that's kind of a long time to ask, have their attention span. We're training them to at least give us an hour attention span. And then when we sit and we call it a midrash, it's, there is no leader. There's not like, we're not setting one person up in the front of the room talking down to everybody. We're sitting in a circle. Everybody's facing one another. I like to make sure that no one has their back to each other. We're here together and we're all equal in this. There's not, like I said, a guy on a pulpit standing there in the corner talking down to the group. We're doing this all together as a midrash, and everybody's is able to share what insights they have or bring up what questions they have concerning that portion. But we stay focused on that. That gives us a focus. That's what we're there to do. And then we'll take another break. We take a potty break and everyone get up and stretch your legs and maybe go get some more food and take about a 30-minute break. And then honestly, some people have to leave then because they got an hour to go home and they have small kids. But then most of us actually will stay for another hour, now going into the New Testament or the half-Torah portion or going into a subject study. We think like right now as we're leading up to Passover, we could have a study then just on the tabernacle and what does a tabernacle look like? And so we can do a subject study. It could be different, but the format that we have is gather, fellowship for food, spend an hour and a half in the Torah portion that we're all doing today, take another break, and then maybe go into the New Testament portion, and that's kind of the format that we've stuck with. We've had, I remember one of the folks that came to our group that ended up not fitting in, and their complaint was they wanted to give sermons, and we were spending way too much time in Scripture. And I'm like, that's kind of the purpose of our group is to be in Scripture, to complain that we're spending way too much time in Scripture and talking about Scripture and there's not enough time for a sermon. And we're like, well, that's not what our home fellowship is. We're not, I'm sorry, but we kind of leave it open to the Spirit of the Lord. If we're talking Scripture for 3 hours that day, I mean, that's what we do. We're digging in and we're talking scripture. That's what we do. So.
And there in that group, you have, I suppose, your elders that if people, because it's open to commentary, if people start going AWOL, the elders will rein them in. Is this correct?
Yeah, like I remember a few weeks ago, we were talking about, we were in the Torah portion talking about Noah and the flood and such, and that could be, and giants and the giants, that could be a whole nother off thing. Well, and someone might want to bring that up, and it's in the portion, and I remember I had to ring him in, and I was like, hey, that's a great, but I want to keep us on track right now. We can talk about that, after break, and say, okay, cool. So it's not like, it's just you're nipping it in the bud real quick, because even in the Torah portion, we can get off on, and I'm like, that's not necessarily what I want to focus on here today. Let's stick to this right now. We can talk about that later. And it's, it's quick and easy. It doesn't have to be, and you're doing it with humility, you're not like pointing someone out, it's like we're all in this together. There's a time and a place for everything. The elder, the teacher's job is just to keep us on track at that current moment.
Yeah, that's it. That's important. But the important thing is if that doesn't happen, then you could just go in any direction at any point. And so you won't ever make it through the Torah portion and you'll get distracted. So
yeah. And if someone comes into the fellowship and it's constantly creating distractions like that, from experience now we've learned, a couple of the guys, the leaders in the group, like maybe need to invite that person out to coffee. We just talk to them about it. Hey, we want you there, but you got to help us keep the peace, and we're happy to talk with you and work with you on these other issues and questions that you have, but we really need you to help us stay on focus here. And if that person refuses to do that, they might have to be asked to leave, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's just, it's not right for them. And, and you still want to disciple them and to help them and give them the resources that they need for the questions that they have. But home fellowship has a different purpose.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very important, man. That's a good way to do it. I think it's saying to them that you got to help keep us on track is a really good way to approach it. I like that.
Well, because we're all a part of this. And actually one of the praises that we have is, especially by the young men that are coming into it and young men with families, and they're on the same track I was 30 years ago, trying to figure this all out. The comment that they say is, what I really appreciate is that there's not one leader, that we're all like, it's a level playing field here. You know what I mean? We're family, and yeah, there's an elder, and that's kind of recognized that there's an elder. It's more about maturity, but it's not about this is the leader of the pack,
Yeah.
Because we're encouraging men to be leaders. We want them to be leaders. We want them to ask questions, and we want to show them, I wish I did when I was a young man that age. I wish I had someone to show me how to, manage a home fellowship. I didn't have a clue what I was doing, and so anyways, that is the purpose of it. We are building up leaders, but not leaders to take over, but leaders, us all being, leaders in our own home,
Yeah, man. It's great to have insight and to hear about how you guys are doing yours. Ours is similar, the way that we run it. And we used to do exactly like that, where we would do the circle. And recently we started, because there's only like four or five families. So we sit around in the circle and we do the thing. But now we've had one guy read it beforehand, and then he'll just be walking us through it, but we're all reading. So who wants to read verse 1 through 10? And then someone will start reading, and then he'll give any comments he have. And hopefully we'll have read this section too, so we can have comments too. So it's a similar thing. It's
that's
just
exactly how we do it.
in trying to raise up leaders, quote unquote, we're trying to like also have, Abraham do it's his, he better have read this thing and have some kind of commentary or thoughts, or than me or my brother or Thomas or whoever. But man, and it's fun. It's great because you become an active member in the whole thing rather than the preaching with no active. You could just go to sleep.
It's the difference. Like you said, we're not there to entertain. You're there to participate. It's totally different than what most people are used to. And it has to be a comfortable setting, especially when they're new to the group, that they feel like, the comments they have is valuable, and it's invited, and that they can, and it can be a safe place that they feel comfortable asking questions or sharing the insight that they got from that portion, you know what I mean? So it has to be this comfortable setting. I mean, in church, you're never felt comfortable to stop in the middle of sermon. Hey, Pastor, I got a question about that. You're not encouraged to ask questions or anything like that. Where it is, this is a setting to do that, but it's up to the elders and the teacher to keep us on track.
And this is why guidance is needed. And this is why experience is needed, because if it's just someone talking on a stage, it's really easy to keep order, because just societally we're trained going to school all our lives not to interrupt the teacher, quote unquote. So now that we're opening things up, if we're sitting in a circle, it's open to commentary. There have to be guys in there who help keep it on track, because since it's open to commentary, that commentary could easily go awry and or just distract from the main purpose. And so I'm seeing in our conversation why it's great, because it's open, but it needs guidance and a hand to have us, be protected on our journey, I suppose.
Yeah. And it's not difficult. Like I said, I think we make it more difficult than it needs to be. And and more than anything, it's just honor and respect for one another. We learn more about loving our brothers ourselves, that's part of like, hey, even on how we have a conversation, right? We don't interrupt one another. We don't, you let people, work out their thoughts and their ideas. And, but again, stay focused on what the purpose of the meeting is and that sort of stuff.
Yeah. Any other thoughts you have about this process of building Abrams 318 and solutions you're creating for the problems that you've seen?
It's happening so fast. Literally, we just launched our website weeks ago, and of course, this is a vision that me and Jay Carper, my co-founder, our families, our wives, it's something that we've actually been trying to work out for a couple years, the idea, the concept, and now I see it just all starting to fall into place. Like I said, we want to have other men that we respect to also keep us in check. That's why we've been putting together, reaching out to these men as our advisory council and saying like, hey, here's some guidelines we're about to put out. Can you read over this? Tell us if there's any issues that we should be concerned about. Hey, here's an article we're putting out on the roles of home fellowship. Will you look this over? Give us your insight. And these are men with highly respected men. And it's come back. So the confirmation of the Lord has just been so obvious. And everyone has been like, I think you're onto something here. I think this is great. This might leave out some people, but we can see why it might need to leave out some people. And we're not trying to be all things to everybody. We're not trying to grow our numbers like a church. Like we're trying to find specific people for a specific purpose, and they're out there. There's this remnant, we're in this wilderness and all alone, but we're not, So I think this website is going to be coming together every week. We're going to be putting in more articles. We're eventually like to have this map. We want to be able to have ways for people to get in contact with one another. The whole Bible fellowship, the whole Bible community might be that source for us. Like I said, we don't need to redo that will, but I think we need to identify ourselves of home fellowship that are committed to this goal and this focus, because there's a lot of home fellowships out there. But they're all alone for some reason. They're all alone because they're on some fringe idea, and we don't want to be home fellowships that are focused on these fringes. We want to be focused on, the truth of Torah and again, the unity of the body of Christ. So I think that we're hoping that website becomes a resource for those people that want to do that. And when we can start identifying other groups around Texas and around the country, it should hopefully help us all find one another, and find people in our region that we can have community with. And if you are interested in starting your own home fellowship, we hope to have some resources to help you understand how to set that up and how to do it, and for you not to do it alone. I think that's the other thing is sometimes home fellowships becomes one person and one family, and like you said, it's a participation thing. We have to have other families involved. And I like where you're at, and we are too, 4 or 5 families is a perfect size. 2 or 3 families is a perfect size. It's not about how big or little it is. Actually, when it gets too big is when now you have the opportunity for growth. And I think we need to also help people to figure out how to procreate, how to have growth, not division and separation. Having growth and setting up another home fellowship, it gives us the opportunity to reach more people more meaningfully, and like I said, we still have the holidays and special events where we can gather together as a bigger group.
I had one more question for you that I almost forgot about. You mentioned doing kind of community outreach or some kind of thing like that. Can you talk about how you've done that or what you're working on in that sphere?
Well, that I think is the biggest challenge in the Torah community, because there's not many Torah community services out there. You and I just did the Refuge Ruckus, and we know that was for a beautiful purpose, for dealing with child trafficking and such. And, TJ created a great organization that has a doing job, an outward reach. And the same thing with Grindstone out there helping people, Torah observant people out there helping people during disaster relief. I mean, we have to have these outreaches to our community. And I think a lot of time at home fellowship, because we're small, we don't think there's an opportunity to do outward reach. And so I think that you get to a point with your home fellowship that are y'all just going to be stagnant and just be there and be self-serving, or we now as a community find a way for us to reach out and to be a part of a bigger community? And there's already things in place. It's not like you have to create something new like Grindstone and Refuge was, but like for example, here in our local community, for the longest time, I mean, since we moved here in Washington County, 2004, my wife and I came aware of a community called Miracle Farm. And this is an organization that brings troubled boys, mainly from the city, all of them have just terrible stories, family problems. And, they're trying to complete high school and all that. And it brings them onto this farm, where they can focus on themselves. They're given a horse to take care of a horse. So they're learning responsibility and they're learning respect. What gives you more respect than taking care of a horse? Because you can get hurt if you don't know how to treat this animal with respect, and it teaches the men to have character and to be men, and they help them get through their graduate high school and then help them move on, and it's been a great ministry that we've seen in our county here. And we've always contributed to it and been a part of it. And I've hired men or young men from that group to come work with me on my farm. And I've tried to be a part of some of those young men in their lives. And we've always contributed to them financially, because it was one of our ties that we give to this organization because we cared about it. And it came from our need, because here I was raising 2 beautiful girls. And I'm like, man, we got to raise up some men. Who are my daughters I got to be, even though I have 2 girls I'm raising, I've got to be concerned about the men in this world, because how are they going to find a man to marry? And I'm lucky. I'm not lucky. It was totally by the grace of God, they both found beautiful, awesome men to marry. And I'm so thankful for it because their families also intentionally raised them, homeschooled them, and got them involved in fact, thinking about it, both of my daughters married their future husbands. They met them in a homeschooling debate club. I'm like, I remember when they're teenagers, I'm like, is this really a good idea for us to be teaching our teenagers how to debate better? But it was, we were engaged in the homeschooling community around us too, even though it wasn't necessarily a Torah community. It's just important to be engaged in a greater community outside of just our home fellowship. And some of us have done that, like some of the men in our group. We've all gone together and volunteered at Grindstone at a disaster when we needed to. So as a group, I'm like, hey, we're bringing men from Brenham. Here we go, so even as a group, we're starting to do outreach like that, and it brings us together as a fellowship. And like when we send our men out to do something like that, we're coming back to our fellowship and sharing what we're doing and the impact that we had and how it changed our lives and how it changed lives for people that we're affecting. And even when we did the ruck, we had families in our group that couldn't participate in the ruck with us, but they could financially support the ruck. They could get behind that too. So we kind of, as a group, can even focus our outreach a bit. And, so that we need to have that outreach, not just be a self-serving home fellowship.
Yeah, you're right. So, man, I have a bunch of questions about your personal life too. I don't want to keep you here forever, but I'm curious what happened with your farm and everything. You had this huge operation going. Do you still? What are you doing?
Well, that's interesting. We've started multiple businesses, and our businesses all interrelate with one another. And back to Jenny and I's vision that we had for marriage all the way back, in 1993. Our goal was to have a farm, and then it turned into this small farm resource development kind of center idea for it to be a resource to help other people's farm and to be engaged in the local food economy. And I used to do farm to table dinners all over the state. I mean, I've been involved with some of the best chefs around the state. Food just brings people together, so much about it. And it's so much more beautiful when it's clean food. And again, some of the people that were our customers were there because of health reasons, like fighting cancer and stuff, and like literally making sure they had to understand where their food was coming from. So I had a serious accountability on my heart, and then we started seeing the whole local food economy go into a shift, and I kind of saw it coming where home deliveries are now coming from out of state and people can order online and get food. So like food is more accessible than it used to be, 30 years ago. And that's a good thing, but it doesn't necessarily support local farmers. And so I saw the economy shifting, the market kind of shifting. So I opened up, and with our heart, the Lord, Jenny and I were like, we've been serving all this food, serving people in Houston. We were even serving the Houston Jewish community. They came to us. It was so cool. We were just coming into Torah, and we had the Houston Jewish community reach out to us to make it a drop site. We were like one of the first farmers in the country to service the Jewish community center. Houston probably being next to New York, the second largest Jewish community in the country, So we're like, hey, we're just coming into Torah, and here the Lord's got the Jewish community coming to us to bring them food. That's pretty cool. And like I said, we had a lot of farmers involved and a lot of other farmers involved. And then we went through a major shift here in Texas. We went through a 500-year drought. I don't remember if y'all remember in the news, but the fires in Texas that was happening I think around 2010, we went literally 18 months without rain. And it was tough. I mean, it was the toughest year. And I, by the grace of God, had just expanded our farm and had dug a new water well. So I had more water than I was ever used to. So that was like actually one of my best years. But when we came out of that drought, I literally lost half my farmers. They threw in the towel and retired. They just couldn't survive it. And so during that 18-month period, I was losing farmers left and right. And then after that, we had the 500-year freeze, and I lost farmers after that, and we experienced a 500-year flood. I mean, it was like bop, bop, bop. I mean, environmentally, everything can happen to us. And we came out of it. And I kept telling my wife, I'm like, man, we just experienced the worst flood, the first free winter, the worst drought in ever record on history. We survived it, but none of my farmers survived it but two. And we literally lost our local farm community because of these environmental things that was happening to us. And so that was tough. So I had to totally rethink my business, had to redefine it. I didn't have the farmers I needed. And even our market was changing. Like I was saying, less people were subscribing to a CSA because they had other access to food now that they didn't have. So I saw that coming, and we ended up opening a mortar and brick and mortar farm store in downtown Brenham. And this is a whole nother story. So part of my idea and that missionary idea of that too is like, you don't just go into a community and tell them what you're doing. I want to show them it, So I found an old building in downtown Brenham that had been abandoned, and nothing had been in it for decades. And I found the property owners and asked them about this building, and I had to do some remodeling, put on some electricity and lights and stuff. I called the city, and they're like, no, a building doesn't exist there. And I'm like, no, I'm standing right here in front of the building. I need the power turned on. We have no record of that building. I'm like, it's here, man. It's well over 100 years old. I need the electric meter turned on, And then the same time in Brenham, I don't know if you remember the news, but our biggest employer in the whole county, our second largest employer in the county, is Bluebell Ice Cream. And anyone in the South knows Bluebell Ice Cream. And so our town is Bluebell country. And Bluebell was in the news, national news, because they had a listeria outbreak and literally shut the whole town down. I mean, had to lay off everybody. And the city was, we're the birthplace of Texas. So there's a lot of tourism here with, like right now with all our wildflowers and the bluebonnets. And we've got Round Top Antique Show, one of the largest antique shows in the country, just right here 10 miles from me. And Brenham realized that they had all their eggs in one basket, and that was Bluebell Ice Cream. They lost 80% of their tourism economy that year. And I was just starting our store downtown Brenham, and I'm selling produce, and I was only open 2 days a week, Sunday and Wednesday. And everyone was like, why aren't you open Saturday? But we were only open 2 days a week. And then a friend of mine I met downtown, the economy was hurting. All the stores were shutting down. Brenham was really in a hard situation. And I started a nonprofit for a friend of mine. I was like, we need to create an event downtown here to bring people back in downtown. And because of that listeria event with Bluebell, I think the city gave me just enough rope to hang myself. And luckily it all worked out. But we started the Texas Arts and Music Festival. And we started curating art and painting murals on the back of buildings throughout downtown Brenham and bringing in music. And one of the things, one of my guys I used to read a lot when I was getting into farming, it was Wendell Berry, and the idea that we have to put culture back into agriculture. And people need to understand where their food comes from. So here I was in the city, and I'm thinking, I'm bringing agriculture. And then we realized there's no culture in the city. There was no music or arts. So we created this event to draw tourism into the town, and it just blew up, man. I mean, it's like, at first everybody's like, what are you doing? You're going to destroy our town. And now that's just completely celebrated. And I've stepped back from that. Now I'm no longer on the board, but I created the Texas Art and Music Festival, and that made such an economic impact on our small town that the Lord it's just pretty neat how that all came together. But stepping back and get a little bit further, I mentioned our heart for marriage. my wife and I, we had originally thought that we would set up a farm in Central America, and it would be a ministry even for couples to like get away and unplug. So, and then we found ourselves doing it in Texas. And then one of our ideas for retirement was we'll put a couple cabins on our farm. And so people can come and stay on the farm and unplug. And we really had a heart for marriage. It was like for maybe married people can get away and have a weekend alone with one another in an environment like this, where get away from the hustle and bustle and unplug and just reconnect. And that was always on our heart, and we didn't know how to do it. And we were getting closer to our children. We were about to be empty nesters. Our children were about to move out of the house, our daughters. And I brought up the conversation with my wife like 3 or 4 times until it finally hit her. I was like, we're about to be empty nesters. We need to start on our next plan in life, and then about the 4th time I brought it up, it was like, oh, it hit her, oh my God, we're about to be empty nesters. And during that time, literally across the street from our farm, there was 2 guys that bought some property, and they started putting cabins on it, and they were turning it into like an Airbnb vacation retreat. And we had watched them because they were doing it. They were starting it about the same time we were starting our farm. So we were kind of like neighbors, and we were watching each other starting our businesses together at the same time. And it was kind of cool. And they literally had like 2 properties up and down the road that we're on. And they ended up developing like 12 cabins on the 2 properties. And so I was talking to my wife, and I noticed they had the business up for sale. And they were trying to sell it, and it was kind of a difficult thing to sell. And they even split up the properties, and they were trying to sell 2 separate properties, and they both had these cabins on them. And I was talking to Jenny, and I was like, right across the street, there are 5 cabins ready to go turnkey. And that's our plan. We could spend the next 5 years trying to build 5 cabins, or we can do that right there. And by, again, the grace of Yah, man, it all worked out. It was like a 1.5 years of negotiation. As far as the farm was economically changing, and my body was physically having a hard time doing it anymore. My back was at the point where I physically was having a hard time. Like I couldn't put my socks on in the morning. I couldn't reach my feet. I mean, I was in a lot of lower back pain. And mainly just because everything I do is bending over and twisting and picking up weight and bending over and, 20 some odd years of that. And I was always aware of it. I was always very conscious of it. But eventually it catches up with you. I'm a lot better now. I needed to physically take a break. And I think the Lord was doing something to me too. I think he really put me through a difficult time, about, I don't know, 8 or 9 years ago. It took me a few years to get over it. And mainly it's possibly a lot of what a lot of men do at that age in their life. I was going through an identity crisis. I was known by my community as Farmer Brad. Everybody called me Farmer Brad. I was just Farmer Brad. And then I was going through this identity crisis. Is like economically, my farm isn't working anymore. And physically, I can't farm like I used to. And I was losing my identity. Who am I? It was like really a hard thing for me. It was breaking my heart. And I realized through that time, that first and foremost, I'm a man of God, and I'm a husband, and I'm a father, and I have this Torah community around me. And I think the Lord was calling me to like step up and be more of a leader of that. Here I've been a leader across the whole state of Texas when it comes to local food economy and me and Farmer Brad. And now I think the Lord was drawing me more into taking care of what I had locally going on right here. And that's why I had my heart to like start the Texas Art Music Festival and be a part of what my local town was, and to make an impact in that direction. And now through the grace of the Lord, we ended up able to purchase this vacation rental business. And my wife is like, this is my most favorite business we've ever had. She's like, this is so less intense of everything else we did, And it really is a beautiful thing. And we didn't realize that the Lord was answering our prayer. He was answering the prayer that we always had, this vision that we always had, to have a place for couples to get away and to unplug and reconnect. And when He first gave us that vision, we thought we were going to do it in Central Texas somewhere. We were going to start a farm and we were going to be a model for farmers and all this stuff. And now looking back at it 30 years later, I mean, this is exactly what He's had us do. Not in the details or the way that we thought that we were going to do it. And it's still progressing. It's still happening. And right now we're in the process more of devoting I sold that business downtown. Thank God it happened just a month. I brought in partners knowing that we would transition to them eventually. And then we ended up selling all of it and walking away from it a month before the COVID shut down. It couldn't have been any other better timing at all, period. And I could have stuck with it longer and try to rebuild it, but it was a door I gracefully saw open in front of me. And we've been focusing now on this vacation rental business for us and developing this property and trying to build something special for people to come to, and we're hoping in the future to make it even more Torah centered. But it is just like growing food for people, it is such a fulfilling business because, people, they'll give us reviews, and we're like 5-star reviews across the board. And they'll leave us, we have a little comments for people to leave us little notes, in the cabins. And, we'll go and close the cabin after people leave, and they'll leave us these beautiful messages about how that like this was so necessary for them. And in some cases, it's like that weekend getaway has like saved marriages, and we're like, wow, we're not even like, all we're doing is providing a place for a Sabbath rest, and it's changing people's lives. So in the future now, I mean, the vision that we have, as I see us being more intentional about it, I have the opportunity to house 50 people on a weekend. And my wife and I, we have a vision that it's what the Lord's given us, and we're hoping that the details, we see it now starting to come together, where we might be able to intentionally put together Sabbath retreats for families in fellowship. People because I've noticed that families and couples that are actually in ministry can put a huge burden on families and couples in ministry. And we feel a heart to like give a place for that Sabbath rest for the leaders and elders in our Torah movement. And maybe for us to come back and support one another, and then to have a Sabbath break like that, and to realize they're not alone, and to reconnect as a couple, and to be able to go back out more energized. And I think Abrams 318 will somehow be a part of that too, or maybe in the future, because I used to organize conferences and workshops, and I see Abrams 318 actually organizing conferences and workshops for elders and trainers in the home fellowship Torah movement. And I have the opportunity to provide a Sabbath rest for those people, and I would invite people to contact me, and let's get together and even you and your wife, y'all need a getaway, y'all need a break, I got a place for you. And you can come and, be a part of our home fellowship one weekend and see what that's all about, and leave energized and maybe energized with some ideas and problems we're able to work out. And imagine like that. So I've got like 13 cabins I can set couples in. And so now what we're looking for is maybe developing a place for groups to get together. And it's just amazing how the Lord has put all this, making all these details. I have been so many times in our business like, Lord, when is this going to happen? Lord, when are you going to, when is all this hard work going to pay off? It's been such hard work. I mean, it has been such hard work, and all we've been able to do is work in faith, and keep trudging forward. There has been so many times, even financially, when I've been on the brink of bankruptcy. A lot of people that are entrepreneurs and self-employed know how critical the cash flow can get sometimes. And, through all of this, I've learned that Yahweh is never late. I mean, his timing isn't my timing, but he is never late. And he will work out the details. We just have to faithfully pursue the vision that he's given us, And so here I am now, 55 years old, kind of semi-retired as a farmer. I still grow for myself and my family and my friends and my neighbors. I'm not doing it commercially like I was. I still do a lot of canning and food preserving. I just love that. I love food. I imagine doing workshops on homesteading and food preservation and all that such. One of my daughters married and they've started a farm about an hour from us, and they're into chicken and livestock. So, it's still in the family but it's just been a beautiful thing. The career and the work that the Lord has given us to do as a family has been very meaningful. It's touched a lot of people's lives that I was never really aware of. And I'm just glad to be a part of it. And I think now that I'm 55, I'm still trying to learn what I want to be when I grow up, And I think the Lord is opening the doors for us to do exactly the vision that he's had from us from the very beginning. And I'm just still humbled and amazed to be a part of it all.
Well, man, you're doing a lot. It seems like you've done a lot your whole life.
Yeah.
How can people find you and reach out to you if they want to talk about any of this stuff?
All right. Well, the home fellowship specifically is abrams318.org. Anything that you send out there, that'll be for that purpose. And you can reach out to me and Jay Carper. We monitor all of that. You'll be reaching out to both of us on that. As far as the retreat opportunity, or if y'all just want to come down to Texas, where our cabin business is Scenic Hill Retreat. Scenic Hill Retreat. We're on probably one of the largest hills in the county, just a beautiful view. We're about 90 minutes between Austin and Houston. Probably not far enough, but far enough as I'd like to be, but it's a beautiful place in Texas. And like I said, we didn't realize how much it touches people's lives just to get out of the city and to get out in the country and to unplug, maybe turn your phone off, turn the TV off. And I've got beautiful outdoor space. I'm such a nature guy. I love nature and being a horticulture, and I just love the opportunity to share that. I kind of take it for granted because it's around us every day. I don't realize how just getting out of the city and getting in nature touches people. And then as far as my farm, and if you wanted to check out that background, that's homesweetfarm.com. That was our life. Home Sweet Farm is actually something I hope for everybody that wants to homestead and start. So many people in the Torah community are into homesteading. And, Jenny and I have been doing that since, I don't know, early 90s. That was part of our Y2K preparation, was to have a farm, and, so we've just been doing that. It's just our life. It's who we are. It's part of our lifestyle. So I'm hoping to do more of that with Home Sweet Farm again. That whole business has changed because, again, it's not a commercial farm so much, but we're still interested in mentoring people when it comes to homesteading and such. So, if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me there. But, yeah, we still got a lot going on. And, I've got to stay busy. It keeps me out of trouble. And, and I'm just excited to see how the Lord's working out all the details, and it's more than I ever imagined.
Well, thank you for doing it all, man. It seems like Abrams 318 is going to be helpful for a lot of people. So thank you for taking the time to talk with all of us today.
Thank you, Luke. Really enjoyed you having me, and it's an honor to be here. I'm really proud of you and how you're really doing a big thing, I think, in the Torah community that's been needed. It's people being able to share their stories, helping us all understand that we're not alone. We're all share the same story, and now it's time for us to find fellowship, and to build one another up. And especially in the times that we think that we're living ahead of time, is like we can't do this alone. We need the body of Christ to be more united and to be more intentional about loving our brothers.
Thank you, sir. And yes, you're right. So having this framework of how to do this from experience, that's important.
I hope so. Thank you, Luke. Enjoyed it.